I don't feel like it's appropriate for children because I
Why?
don't feel the need to expose them to what I consider is an adult idea.
Okay,
I
but
don't
why is it
actually
adult for somebody to dress in a dress and have poofy hair? If anything, I would actually say the outfits of drag are probably more appealing to most children than actually most adults. They
really don't
don't.
like the idea of the government making that decision for them ahead of time
But
for that to
you're
be a
making
thing,
you're wait.
right?
You're the
The
one who
the
wants to
the
make
default
you're the one that's being daddy government here. You're the one that you're saying the government should make the decision that parents don't even have a choice.
right, because
They can, if these people can be like, oh, there's a drag queen story hour. They don't. You're not going Billy, and then Billy
yeah,
has to be like,
because
okay. But you're saying daddy government comes in and says, if you bring your child here, we're gonna take him away. You're the
and that's
one that
because
being government. Here's my compromise. I'm gonna
okay.
organize an event instead where we dress up the kids in drag and we read a story to them. There's my compromise.
Mm, no.
What? But I thought but it's for the kids then.
Mm, you're gonna have a real hard time selling that one to parents.
Yeah, because you're just having a disgust response. This whole thing is just a reactionary response, so I feel like something you don't understand. You're jumping in loops to try to justify this authoritarian response to this issue. How are you doing, CTV?
Dylan, it's been a long time, but I'm doing pretty well, man. Wife's had knee surgery here recently. It's there, there's been some, some complications, right. Today she went for an ultrasound. We're trying to figure out what's going on with that. But besides that, right, we've had a lot of discourse on the Twitter, right,
Yep.
about some of these what I feel are more adult topics that I feel like most people, whenever I end up arguing with them, it feels like they're looking at it from the perspective of a kid trying to defend, right, them being able to do a thing. Whenever I'm looking at it, and I feel like everybody else that's probably listening to this conversation or playing part to it should look at it as an adult and be like, you know what, that is an adult thing, and that there's no reason for children to be, playing a part in it. So
Okay.
it's like taking that step.
So can we like define your position like quickly? Because from what I was seeing on Twitter, you seem to be in support of the, I think it's the Texas law. It's also been proposed in Florida of the criminalization and making it a felony for a parent to bring their child to a drag show and the suspension of the parental rights. And you further expanded on it by like when Maddie was talking back and forth with you about like the idea like, well, my parents brought me to a drag show and I'm perfectly fine. Should I have been taken away from my parents? And you responded that yes, you should have, before going on to like say like, hey, like maybe you wouldn't have this position, Maddie, if you were, if you were not with that family of yours. Am I mischaracterizing you at all?
Nope. And I've had that same conversation with another fellow named Duke that was from North Carolina. Came into my chat. We had conversation about it, and at the end of that conversation, he was like, "You know what? You have a point." He was willing to have the honest conversation of maybe I wouldn't have been okay with this thing had I not gotten exposure to it when I was younger. So,
Okay.
you know,
So
I like having those honest conversations. Like there's mean conversations and then there's honest ones. And I feel like people end up coming to that conclusion whenever they have the honest one. So
I guess for me, I feel that this is a overreach of the government into people's personal lives to an extent that is strange. And I also feel like this is an attempt by people to protect children from something they don't understand. Not they think they're protecting them from something sexual, something inappropriate for children, when I really feel like it is a lack of knowledge about drag that is fomenting this and fomenting this, and that it is being particularly aimed at drag because of its status within the queer community in comparison to other types of performance of a similar nature, which nobody would ever propose such legislation to ban anything of that nature. Um, so I feel like it's just a lack of knowledge about drag and the different types of drag that can exist that are entirely not sexual or inappropriate for children.
well, that can be true in instances, right, where that's not what's being shown or being shared on Twitter. What we have on Twitter right? From Dallas, Texas, from the videos that Alex Stein shared, or from other examples that have been being pointed out, is it's like worst case scenario of what it is that you would not want children to be a part of, right? Like the one in Dallas, Texas, is you had the performers dressed scantily, uh,
Wasn't that bad.
moving moving provocatively,
Moving
getting the
provocatively.
the children to give them money, right? All the while, there's a neon sign behind them that says it's not gonna lick itself. All of these things, right, paint the picture of what you're looking at is like worst case scenario and not something that parents would want their children to be involved with. I wouldn't want my kids going to an event like that. I feel like that is way, like, inappropriate. That's how I feel about it.
Well, then, I mean, my first thing is you can raise your children however you want, right? So if you don't want to bring your children to an event, that's perfectly up to you. But first off, we'll say we're talking about one example, right? And there would be no discussion if there was of a concert of a scantily clad nature, right? And we would have no discussion of we need to stop people from bringing kids to concerts. Like this is getting out of control. Or we need to stop people from bringing kids to movies because there was a movie where there were people in it that were scantily clad or anything of that nature. It's specifically drag because I feel like people don't understand the medium and they believe that drag is inherently sexual, which it isn't. Drag has a long history of being comedic, of being performative in the nature of like showing off fashion or dance skills. That is not scandalous in any nature. Of course, there's famously Drag Queen Story Hour, which I'm a supporter of, which does not introduce sexual topics whatsoever to children, just people in costumes and their drag that is of a gender nonconforming nature, which I believe is not at all inappropriate for children to be around. And could I also say that I believe the event in Texas, when it comes to things like the handing of the dollars, I don't feel like the handing of the dollars was really that inappropriate to me. That is something that has happened in drag shows for a very, very long period of time. But I've always seen it those instances, for instance, as like tipping a performer. You know, when you walk across the street, you see somebody playing the drums, and you go over, you hand them $1. That isn't like tipping a stripper. That's tipping a performer for a performance. I think the worst part of it, in my opinion, I don't think the outfits were extreme. I think it was the sign in the background, which was actually a sign in reference to ice cream, as people digging up the neon sign and where it's from dug up. I think it should have been taken down beforehand. It was suggestive given the context.
So, like I said, we have all the worst examples that you wouldn't want to have being the, say, how you would want drag to be understood. And now that, like, these instances are now associated with drag, you basically have like the parent's worst nightmare, right? Before everyone's eyes for
Is
them
it?
to have to take a look at, right? So, like, I've always considered this kind of behavior to be more adult in nature. I always have, right? Even
Okay.
whenever halfway nights that we did underway on the USS Tennessee, where you got guys dressing up in drag, right? And we did underway, fucking I can't remember what we called it. It was anyway, whoever the queen was, right? Based on who did the best, they vote, da da da, right? So, like, we've done that, but it's always for me been an adult topic. There was never a point of conversation where it ends up being, you know, something that the children need to be exposed to, right? So that said, like the story time hour, this, that, and the other, I see that as more of trying to say do more for the adult that is doing the performance than it is trying to expose children to new ideas and cultures, right? The whole thing for me is adult and needs to stay there, and I don't see any reason to push it on the children.
They're reading a book. I think the thing the child gets out of it is somebody performing in a way that is non-gender conforming, right? Reading a book to child. So I think what the child gets out of it is they meet somebody that's different who is reading to them a friendly story, different from how most people conform with gender standards, which I don't think is inappropriate for a child whatsoever. If I was to put on a dress right now and continue my stream, would then that make my stream not appropriate for children just
I
because I
don't
put on
think
the dress?
I'm going to be honest with the level of conversations that we end up going
Well,
into
that
here
then
in the
that's
Twitch
that's not
policy
what I
space.
meant.
I wouldn't say that
Yeah. Okay.
it would definitely be an adult space anyway.
That's not that's not what I meant. So could you like address what I meant by like if I put on a dress, Does that mean I should no longer be able to read books to children?
Given the medium, you'd be more into having a conversation about cosplay than you would be about drag, I think.
I what?
Well, you'd be putting on a performance on Twitch, right? Which is a
Well,
public
no.
medium.
Well,
Like you could
no.
be putting on
Okay.
a
So,
character for,
okay.
like you
Scrap,
could do even a
scrap,
Shakespeare
scrap
play,
Twitch.
right?
Scrap Twitch. Let's say I wanted to go down to my local library and read a book to children because I wanted to give back to my local community, but I did it in a dress. Is that inappropriate?
Well, it'd be inappropriate if the parents were led to believe one thing and then what they found out was something different. The disingenuousness is what creates that
Okay.
situation of mistrust.
So if I didn't label it correctly as like a content label warning, Dylan will be wearing a dress, which I don't think is necessary. But let's say, do you think that anybody like went to these drag queen story hours under the idea that the person would not be in drag? It's called drag queen story hour. I think somebody would kind of know from what the event's called what they're bringing their child to.
Which is like you can only go so far down the progressive line before you're going to start getting some legitimate pushback, right? And parents are pushing back against this legitimately right now based off
No,
of
they're
what's
not.
being put out on they are.
I don't think they are. I think I
I'm
think
seeing
I think it's fear. I think it's fear and misunderstanding.
that whether like how they're pushing back does not negate the fact that they are in fact pushing back, right? So there's a lot of pushback, and you can suspect why it is that they're pushing back. But the pushback is that this is not acceptable behavior,
Why
and
is
that's
it
what
not
needs to be understood
acceptable?
because people see it as an adult thing. That's
Why?
why.
Why isn't it an adult thing for me to wear a dress besides wearing a suit? Because
I don't know what kind of
I would just flatly say that those people are wrong.
okay, and then they would just tell you that you're wrong.
Okay, but now I can
So now we
so
understand,
wait, but now
what's
tell me then, why is it something that should be kept from children? Why?
because parents see it as inappropriate.
Okay, but why is it inappropriate?
Because it's sexually suggestive.
How is it sexually suggestive for me to
How is
wear a
it not?
dress?
How is it not?
Because I just see the dress as just a piece of pretty clothing. People like to wear
Alright.
things that are pretty. If I was
So
wearing
we're
clothing that
what
was
we're do
wait, if I was to wear clothing to show pieces of my body specifically that were sexual organs, like I wanted to show off my genitalia or I wanted to show off something of that nature, then you could
Burns is
say
an immoral,
that clothing
morally
is sexually
corrupt,
suggestive.
bankrupt man.
I don't want you wearing that around my children. That would be understandable. But a dress is just like a basic dress. Like I'm just with like a
okay,
sunflower dress. Like what's the problem with that? Because if you look at these drag queen story hours, they're wearing colorful makeup, big wigs, and a dress. There's nothing sexual about it. How is it sexually suggestive?
alright, but that's not what we're talking about from Twitter. It's nice that you keep pivoting back to Drag Queen
That
Story
isn't
Hour,
a
right? And you keep
pivot because the legislation you support would ban children from going to that event.
it's you have people, right, that are taking what's going on here and pushing it to the nth degree, right? What actually needs to be happening is that LGBTQ IA plus community members need to be reaching out to conservatives and saying, "Look, that drag tie or that event that happened in Dallas, Texas, that's some bullshit." I'm reaching across the aisle saying that's not the kind of shit that we feel like need to be going on, right? That needs to be happening. And since that's not happening, right, you are now having even more people coming up to the, oh, well, now this, that, and the other. And this is only going to continue to get bigger,
So it's a
right?
reactionary response, is what you're telling me.
It's a lack of community control that's leading other people to think that they need to control it.
So, because the queer community has not gotten in an uproar over this one drag event in Texas,
Not just one, it's
there's
been a few.
mo okay.
Yeah, I know
There,
you're look, there's a you're doing your Ukraine thing, and I'm very proud of you for that, just to be clear, right? But
hmm
there's been quite a few of these that have been happening on Twitter.
and
It's not
I
just,
and there's a decent chance I'm probably not that objected to a decent amount of them. If you can show me one where somebody was being sexual with a child in any manner, of course I'd oppose it. Nobody should be sexual with a child in that type of manner, especially in a public or private or any setting like whatsoever, right? Okay.
Right.
So my question to you is, it's because of this event or some other events or whatever events you're talking about, which again, we're not really even that objectionable, except the main object I would have in that one event would be the sign, right? Why is it that the response now is not to just say, hey, you should have taken down the sign or whatever? The response is, we now need to stop all children from going to drag events. Period. Completely taking this part of queer culture and banning it from children, even though much of it, as we can see from Drag Queen Story Hour, could be appropriate for children. Because I could easily tell you, well, I see a lot of parents bring their kids to Rolling Stones concerts or Metallica concerts. And these places, or they've got satanic images on their cassette tapes, and they've got songs about having sex with women and war and violence. And since there's no proper outrage at this, I think the law needs to get involved and take these children away from their parents. Most people would look at me like I'm insane if I was to say such a thing, or like I was a theocrat. But when we say this about drag, it's appropriate. How?
The examples that we are being given as to what is describing drag is the worst possible scenario for you to put out in front of society. The sexually suggestive nature in which they were moving and performing as
How is it
strippers would
sexual? How
by
is it?
accepting
That's not a fair characterization of their
it
movements.
is. It
No, it
is.
wasn't. They were not
Y-
dancing like
y-
strippers.
they
The
were.
most suggestive thing that happened during that performance was a person did a split. And I
You
can
know
tell
what?
you that I've seen a lot of 7 and 8 year old girls do splits on the playground when I was a kid.
And I watched the 1996, Olympics, right, where you had Dominic Mucciano and Dawes and Kerry Strug and everybody performing the Olympics. My sisters were big into doing gymnastics then, and lots of girls in leotards, right? So here's the difference: is the sexually suggestive nature in which these grown people, right, are presenting themselves in front of children.
Do you believe children should be taken away from their parents if their parents bring their kids to Rolling Stones concerts?
Are the Rolling Stones still performing?
Answer the question. Of
Oh, and you already know the answer to that. But I tell you what, though,
course
there
not.
is
It'd be
something that I think that we
ridiculous.
need. I think there's something that we need to do, right? Whenever you get back stateside, you and I, right, as soon as is age appropriate in your state, need to go to a strip club, Dylan. I want to. Me and you need to go. Okay.
I despise strip clubs. I really
How do you? How do you know? How do you know? Have you been?
when I was 16, and this is actually an example of why I actually sympathize with this topic very heavily. My father
Okay.
was very forceful about me going to the Tilted Kilt. Are you familiar with that establishment?
I am, and you know what? That's it. It's a little bit, I would say, more over the top than Hooters. Go ahead.
He brought me to the Tilted Kilt as a gift for my 16th birthday. And when I found out what it
Okay.
was, I was very uncomfortable. I don't like those settings. I find them creepy. I don't like the sexual nature of that type of restaurant environment. It's not enjoyable for me. It's also
Okay.
not what I enjoy, right? But
Right.
then a group of men, as I was telling my dad this outside the building, trying to be like, I don't feel comfortable, etc. A group of men in their 50s and 60s like surrounded me in like a circle and started trying to encourage me into going to the Tilted Kilt, even though I was clearly displaying that I was uncomfortable, because that's what a guy is supposed to do. And so eventually I conceded, went in and ordered some wings and did my best to not pay attention. And of course, the whole time people were trying to get me to interact with the women in very weird ways. And for me, those types of environments are very uncomfortable. And that was an instance of me being a minor and not wanting to engage with grown women in that way, and people pushing me in that direction. And you want to know what? I'm pretty sure nobody in this country, in response to that, which I would say is a lot closer to grooming than anything that happened with these children at this drag event or with Drag Queen Story Hour or with any of these events, would say we should take that child away from his father.
It's probably where there's going to be some pullback from people when it comes to what they're willing to accept in everyday society. I think that we've already kind of been seeing that with regard to parents getting a lot more involved in the curriculum, right? And bringing up their concerns about CRT. We've been seeing that. So this is like overall parents across the country are like at their the top of their limit as to what they're willing to actually put up with, and this is just something that people that are on the left are
You
gonna have
sound
to
like Hillary
understand.
Clinton.
How do I sound like Hillary Clinton?
Are you familiar with the reaction parents had to violent video games like Grand Theft Auto and the coffee mod? In Grand Theft Auto, I think it was 3, there was this thing called the coffee mod where it was like a part of the game where you could have sex with a woman, but they edited it out, but with hacks you could access it. And the coffee mod, as well as violent video games, a lot of people try to pin it on mass shootings and violence and corrupting the children. A lot of this, in my opinion, had to do with the fact that parents didn't really understand video games. They didn't understand what the coffee mod was. They thought it was a part of the game, but it wasn't. It was actually a thing you would have to access by messing with the files. Most children were never going to access it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Hillary Clinton was one of the big advocates to actually crack down on these types of video games in defense of the children, because, like all those parents, she didn't understand the video game industry. And so, to me, you sound like Hillary Clinton right now.
Okay. So what you're doing
Or
is you're
Tipper Gore.
trying.
Tipper Gore is another example.
Yeah, but what you're doing, right, is you're trying to equivocate it to something that's not relevant to what we're talking about here. We're talking about video game violence versus sexuality, and the examples that we have shown on Twitter
Do you
are
think
the very
violence
worst.
is more appropriate to show children than sexuality, by the way? Completely unrelated. I'm just curious.
Hmm.
Like, would you show your 14-year-old child, 12-year-old child Scarface?
Hmm.
I remember some of my fondest memories was watching Candyman with my father.
Hmm. I think that I think violence is way more a part of everyday life than sexuality, to be sure, because
Really?
like yeah, because everything
I
like
think they
even
go
the
hand in hand. I mean, look at advertising. Children are exposed to that at a very and I'm saying that as a negative thing, by the way. Children are exposed to that at a very young age. Like how they
no, I
like
just
McDonald's ads where these like big busted women are like their boobs are popping out from their bras as they eat McDonald's or Big Mac sandwich. It's like completely unrelated, but they put it in there because sex sells. It's just how corporations operate.
yeah, but that's not, I didn't feel like that was the question you were asking, right? I felt like the question that you were asking was more along the lines of which one do I think is like more age appropriate
Yeah, yeah.
across
Well,
all ages?
I am asking that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think violence is because violence could just be simply defending yourself, right? It
Okay.
could be, I mean, there's a lot of things that would be considered violent. So teaching teaching a child how to navigate, recognize, interact with different levels of violence, I think is just kind of inherent to being alive and being here as a physical being. Right now, sexuality is something that waits till adulthood. Right. We've colloquially decided by law that that is 18 years old. Before all of that, it would have just been kind of decided along puberty, right? Like people reach a certain age and then here you go. So now that we're past that and we're formed a more civilized society, we've decided to codify it. So 18 is when you're an adult, and then that's where adult things can be talked about. So I don't mind children that are under the age of 18 being restricted when it comes to learning about sexuality at all. You know why? Because
At
I'm a
all.
fucking adult.
At all.
They still need to learn the science and biology, obviously, of how
Well,
life works,
not
but the
just that,
sex
but they need to learn about safe sex. That's extremely important.
how a prophylactic work is not sexuality. That's just explaining a
How a
product and
condom
how it
works
works.
is about sexuality.
That's just explaining how a product works.
Well, but you're explaining it under the guises of if any of you have sex, this is like you need to use this. That's how
Yeah,
it
yeah,
should
but
be described to them.
that's not getting into sexuality though, right? Or the
Well,
expression
no,
of it.
I don't think teachers need to. I mean, I think teachers should like describe safe sex practices to students for health reasons. But I don't think they need to like show them pornography or something.
Okay, so we found some good lines here. So
Okay, so yes, we agree that we should not bring our children into the room and then show them hardcore pornography or pornography. We found the agreements. But I again, going back to the original question, we've gotten off topic here. I there's a lot I could engage there with, but I feel like we're just getting off topic. When it comes to these drag shows, I don't feel like you're saying that people feel that it's adult, yeah. But
mhm.
I don't understand why this non-traditional form of gender expression, i.e., me wearing a dress, a big wig, and a lot of makeup, is inappropriate for children. Why? You're saying that parents believe that, but my question is, why do they believe that? Because I believe parents have believed a lot of things about a lot of subcultures that have been wrong, whether it has been video games or any other subculture on the internet, for example.
It gets that way because they have the examples to be able to point to directly on Twitter that leads them to believe that those actions that they see from the niche few that you'd be like, "Fuck no, that's not what represents drag," but that's what they see, right? And then whenever you get people that see the same things that we saw, and then they choose to start defending it, and it's like, "No, that shit's not cool. It shouldn't have been in front of
Yes.
kids. Kids."
So you're saying that bad examples are spoiling the entire image of drag. And so, okay, let's say that I don't even want to debate you the specifics about that Texas event because we just disagree on some of the specifics. But let's say that that's the case. Why is your reaction then ban children from interacting with any forms of drag? That feels like just a
Because
reactionary response for, even though you're acknowledging here that it seems that response is being just produced by a few bad examples, not the entire industry,
well,
not the entire culture.
that's where, like, legislatively, the people feel like they need to do something, and by putting a prohibition on the children being there, it forces the conversation back between adults as to how, like, this thing can even be reapproached as a conversation. Because right now, the whole image of it is this is all adult. There's nothing cool about it as far as it being for kids, and the picture's already been
And
painted.
a lot of
And
people
that's
are fighting to change that. For example, Drag Queen Story Hour, which under the legislation you're proposing, the people who are trying to work to create these environments where children can interact with drag in a safe environment, you're you're endorsing legislation that would take that ability away. And you would take that decision making power of putting their children in those environments which are safe and not harmful away from the parents. Not only that, but then taking those parents' children away from them if they decide to go through with it anyway.
Yeah, I just don't see the point in exposing children to the idea. I feel like it's an adult idea,
Well, I don't see the
and,
point in bringing any kid to any concert. It's pointless. I hear concerts can have drugs there.
yeah, I'm okay with
You
that too.
know
I'm
that
okay with look, I'm actually okay with children, right, being restricted to their
really.
schools. Oh, yeah. I'm a fucking adult. The children need to be in school learning what they need to learn in order to come out and be productive members of society and at least be able to tell me what the three branches of government are, right? And they fucking can't. So since they can't, they need to go be studying and learn some shit instead of coming out here and me having these dumbass arguments with them about why somebody with a green dildo, right, can just flop it all over a fucking stage like Christina Aguilera. The fuck you want from me, Dylan? Come on, bro.
So to be clear, okay, I'm trying to find where the humor starts and the real take ends. But you wouldn't be against children going to concerts, correct?
If I tell you what, if Christina Aguilera feels the need to try to normalize that
No,
behavior, you'll find me on the
any
bandwagon.
concert, period. They want to go to
No,
the Wiggles concert. You know the Wiggles, right?
no, not
They
really.
were a children's band. They were made for.
On the whole, I don't have a problem with anyone going to a music concert,
Okay,
right?
right.
It's the
Why?
actual physical displays of sexual content
Okay.
that's the specific problem, right?
So, if the specific problem is the display of sexual content, then I just want to make sure your position is consistent. Then you wouldn't want children at, say, a Rolling Stones concert or a concert where they could have songs about sex or sexuality or and I guess maybe violence, but it seems that you are more willing to have children around violence than sexuality.
I
Um,
just don't think you can keep them away from violence at all because
okay.
it's a part of everyday life.
So would you also say children should be banned and children and parents should have their kids taken away from them if they take them to like a Rolling Stones concert?
No, no.
Why not? What about our
Oh, if
kid?
they take oh, hold on. Rolling Stone concert with the sex songs and everything. Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like a Kid Rock concert, for example, he's sung a lot of songs about intercourse. Hell, one of them even had a little reference to pedophilia in it. Really
Yeah,
bad
I
stuff.
actually I don't have a problem at all banning kids from that kind of shit. Miley Cyrus, see him in the chat, right? That one too, right?
And so
The sexually
you would say
suggestive
the same
content.
thing about GTA then. Children should not be allowed. They should be banned by legislation from banning playing games like GTA, which also has sexual content in it, or watching
Absolutely.
movies that have sexual content in it, like American Pie.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Their kids need to be studying so they can tell me the three branches of government.
okay. So this is you would want this legislation then in Texas and Florida to touch all aspects of sexuality then, right? You would
And
want it
yeah.
expanded and you to ban all of
Oh
this
yeah.
stuff.
Yep. Heterosexuality too.
See, I
But
did
it's hard to get that one out of science, though, isn't it? Because heterosexuality means sperm plus egg equals
well,
child,
queer
right?
people exist in science too, though. You can't take that
It,
away.
I didn't say they didn't exist in science, but the conversation always comes back around to basic biology and how
So
you end up
I guess
propagating life.
I guess for me, I think the idea, like if I had a 14-year-old kid, I'd let him play GTA if he's mature enough. I think it's up to the
Mm,
parent to decide whether or not their child is mature enough when it comes to these topics, right?
maybe.
Now, if media
Hold on,
is
real quick.
yeah,
What about these mass shootings that have happened recently, though? What if their parents felt like they were responsible enough, and then next thing you know, they're doing these things?
I
What if
don't
that leads it to it?
I don't think the mass shootings are caused by violent video games. I think there's no evidence whatsoever to show that mass shootings and violent video games have any correlation whatsoever.
Well, I don't know that the people's personal histories, and I'll admit that, right? But there could be a conversation in there where their parent or their guardian or whoever thought that they were mature enough to play this video game, and then now we're not going to have the conversation about the video game, even though that person was exposed to that kind of violence through the video game, right? So, like, where's the
The
conversation actually start?
See, I don't think that these mass shooters at all. Again, I don't see there's any evidence that these mass shooters were introduced to violence by violent video games, which I also think people in our society would be introduced to violence usually much earlier from violent video games. Just look at media, cartoons, uh, advertisements, movies, television, the internet, YouTube videos. They're going to be introduced to violence at a much younger age than when they would be playing GTA or even have the capabilities of playing GTA. Like physical, like actual, like being able to even work all the controls. And so I don't think there's any evidence whatsoever correlating violent video games with mass shootings. And so
And I
again,
don't,
I believe it is
and I
up
don't
to the parent to determine whether the child is mature enough to handle those types of topics. I would only be against for these medias being banned if they're being used under the auspices of specifically grooming children under the idea of we're going to have this child play GTA and train them to be a school shooter, then yes, I would want something like banned. Or introducing children to sexual media under the ideas that one day you want to start molesting that child or turn them into, or you want to start pimping out the child. That would be the only. But then I would be against the pimping out and the sexuality and the training to be a mass shooter, not the media.
yeah, but there's a whole lot of I don't know, there's a whole lot of trust in what you're saying. A lot of trust in people and not understanding the
A
way
lot of
things
trust
are
in
now.
government in what you're saying, CTV.
Mm, true, both ways, right? So you got to have trust in something. But in this instance, right, it's a lot of the people, right, the parents that are coming out and saying that we got a real problem with this thing. And the examples that were being shown as to what this thing is supposed to be representing are not the best in the world.
So if I was trying to show somebody why their child should be allowed to play video games, period, and then I just showed somebody the coffee mod, right? Which I don't even think that's the case here, but I'm just entertaining this. But I showed them GTA and the coffee mod. That would be a very disingenuous portrayal of video games as a whole. because I would be showing one very particular aspect of it that is crafted specifically for a mature audience, right? Where Drag Queen
Okay.
Story Hour, for instance, is not. It is crafted for a child's audience, much like a SpongeBob game, Mario, or Sonic the Hedgehog. And video games would be crafted for children, and children are supposed to be the target audience for these games, and I think are completely appropriate for them to play those games. And so my question to you, once again, is why should children be barred from going to Drag Queen Story Hour, which is completely age appropriate and learning about the very hungry caterpillar?
Right. Well, like I said earlier, I feel like that does more for the adults than it does for the children. There's no reason to expose the children to the idea,
So wait,
right? So
wait,
it's
wait, wait,
like,
wait. This is not consistent though. What you're
no,
saying?
it is consistent, right?
Why?
Because
How is this there hurting the child? That's my
okay.
issue. How is it
There's no
hurting the
reason
kid?
to expose the child to this idea, right? You're doing
Mm,
something more for the person performing than you are in this instance, because what you're talking about
how do
is
you know
this
this?
drag drag. Hold on, what is it? A
Drag Queen.
drag time story
Drag
hour?
comes around. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So drag time story hour happening in public schools, right? That's the instances that we're talking about, right?
Yes. Oh, not public schools, libraries usually.
Okay, so libraries, not public schools. There was no instances of public schools that I saw.
I'm unfamiliar. It's usually buildings that get public funding, like libraries.
Okay, so we've got publicly funded buildings, and then some buildings want to have it, some buildings don't. So, like, that's where you obviously get the people's input on what's going on. There may be some out there where they're like, "Hey, we've known this person; they're part of the community. It's not a thing." But that's where you get people knowing each other. It's whenever you have situations, especially like in larger governments, like states, as an example, where there's a lot of things happening in a lot of different places. You may have representatives from different parts of the state. They're like, hey, we need something done here because we've got problems that we can't deal with. So now let's talk to DeSantis and go see about getting some legislation done.
So,
It,
so your
so
main objection to the drag queen story hours and why children should be banned and be taken away from their parents if they're taken to one of these shows, and why you support that legislation, is because it does something for the performer. They get enjoyment out of it. Um, it's not for the children. That's what you're saying.
no, I'm saying that drag is an adult topic, right?
How is it
And
adult?
because that's how I view it.
But okay, what's adult about wearing a dress or poofy hair and
It's
makeup?
a grown adult dressing it in a way that's, you know you know what? It's the same reason why there are people that had issue when they found out who Mrs. Doubtfire was, okay? Same thing. They felt like they were lied to.
You think they're lying to the children by putting on drag? That's why it's adult. They're
It
lying about their identity. It's like a
it
secret
happened with
identity. It's like
Mrs.
Batman.
Look, like, what look, you're wanting me to explain to you, right, all of the individual nuance that happens in these schools, Dylan, right? That's what you're looking for, but there's no way for me to be able to do that, right?
I'm
So,
not asking for nuance. I'm just asking why it should be banned because you want to ban it and you can't. And I just want to know why. If you want to
be
ban something, you should at least tell me why it should be banned.
Burns is an
because I feel
immoral,
like it's an
morally
adult topic.
corrupt,
Okay, but then I
bankrupt
ask you
man.
why and how is an adult topic, and then that's where we're getting the hiccup. Like if I said we should ban children from eating apples, and you were like, why? I think that's just for adults. Why is it just for adults? Well, that's just how I view it. Like you see the problem there. You got to tell me why it's for adults. Like why would it be just for adults to have somebody read a book in a flamboyant outfit? We'll just say that.
Why is that something that's necessary for the kids to be exposed to?
You could say the same thing about performers
I'm
at
asking
Disney.
you that
Wait,
question.
you could say I think it's entertainment. I think children like to be entertained. And I think
So
also children like to be educated, and reading books to children help educate them. And so educating children while entertaining them is one of the best ways you can educate and entertain children.
okay,
It's like
so
children
that
like to be entertained by princesses at Disney World, or Gaston at Disney World, or Beauty and the Beast at Disney World. These performers who put on an act to make these kids believe they've been taken away to a mystical land of Disney. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's fun.
Yeah, but that's more like I said earlier, that's getting more into the world of cosplay because you're trying to be a specific character, right? If you're going into Disney and you're,
Drag
dressed up
queens
as
are
every
separate characters. They have separate names. They have names like names that they have for their drag queen performer. They are playing a character when they're a drag queen in a way.
yeah, but like if you go to Disney and that character does something inappropriate there, there's accountability specifically to the corporation that you're cosplaying as, right? It's not
And the organizations that sponsor Drag Queen Story Hour have an accountability if something goes wrong.
so that's where like it's viewed as an adult thing by I haven't ran across one
Burns is
adult
an
besides the
immoral,
kids that I
morally
interact with
corrupt,
here on
bankrupt man.
Twitch, right? Or online, right? Which I and just like you, right? I take everything that I hear online with a grain of salt and automatically assume from the beginning that it's suspect. So a lot of people out here defending this behavior. I don't feel like it's appropriate for children. I don't feel like it's appropriate for children because I
Why?
don't feel the need to expose them to what I consider is an adult idea.
Okay,
I
but
don't
why is it
actually
adult for somebody to dress in a dress and have poofy hair? If anything, I would actually say the outfits of drag are probably more appealing to most children than actually most adults because of its extremely flamboyant, colorful nature. Kids like bright colors. I mean, kids go to these things and then they go again because they enjoy them. The kids are obviously getting entertained and they're reading books and they're getting something out of it. You're painting it as if it's like an adult has like hijacked a reading session and is just using these children as a captive audience. These children enjoy these events. Not all of them, but not a lot of people enjoy. A lot of kids don't like to listen to books. I would say
yeah,
the most kids that don't enjoy Drag Queen Story Hour, it has nothing to do with the drag queen. It has mostly to do with the fact that reading sucks for kids. Kids hate to read because learning is boring. I want to go throw a big rock in a lake. You know what I mean?
yeah, but there's a whole lot of adults, right, that are the parents of these children that feel like that it's inappropriate for children to be participating in something like that,
Okay.
and they
And they
definitely
don't
don't like the idea of the government making that decision for them ahead of time
but
for that to
you're
be a
making
thing,
you're wait.
right?
You're the
The
one who
the
wants to
the
make
default
you're the one that's being daddy government here. You're the one that you're saying the government should make the decision that parents don't even have a choice.
right, because
They can if these people can be like, oh, there's a drag queen story hour. They don't. You're not going, Billy. And then Billy
yeah,
has to be like,
because
okay, but you're saying daddy government comes in and says, if you bring your child here, we're gonna take him away. You're
and
the
that's
one that
because
being government here.
yeah, and that's because there's been a lot of people that have been coming along and saying that this is what's going to be happening in these public spaces and pushing it down other people's neck. So, like I said before, you're
How is it
going to
being
have a
pushed down
pushback
people's neck?
saying that the drag time story hour and these events are going to be happening. Even if there was pushback against it, it was still
It's a
happening. If I
public
remember
space. These places, these
right,
library.
so you're
Wait, let me
so you
finish. Let me finish. At libraries, at concert halls, at all these places like public buildings, there are people who host things there that I disagree with vehemently. Like Republican reading times or whatever, like a bunch of stuff that like people will organize in public buildings. They can like be like, "Hey, I'm gonna go and reserve this for my thing that I disagree with." And you know what I do? I just don't go. I don't say I gotta go over there and I gotta like say you're not allowed to like I don't know talk about your favorite gun or talk about your favorite Trump quote. Like I don't do that. But what you're asking for is for the government to make the decision that this specific event that is being paid for by Drag Queen Story Hour that people from the community ask to happen and reserve with their for it to happen. They bring their kids, they do the whole thing. They should not legally be allowed to.
they're introducing sexuality to their children at an age where it's
How
not
is it
appropriate.
sexuality? How is somebody wearing a dress? How is if I put on a dress, is that inherently sexual?
Why is the dress being put on?
To put on a performance. Is the perform
Okay.
is reading to read a book.
Apparently, a lot of people these days see people that do that kind of thing as inherently sexual.
Yeah, and
I
I think that's the
personally think that
problem.
the well, that's not a problem,
That is a
right? It's
problem.
No, it's not a problem for people that see it that way. It's a problem for you because you would want to continue pushing that on to children younger and
But you
younger.
haven't
The
been able to
conversation
tell me
stops at
how it's
18.
sexual. If I say I think apples are inherently sexual, and you're like, that's ridiculous, and I'm like, I'm gonna ban apples, and if you give your kid apples, I'm gonna throw you in prison, right? And you're like, and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, like, I just see it as I see it as sexual. You need to tell me how it's sexual. What is sexual about a drag queen in a colorful dress reading a book to children? Where is the sexual element? You can say people see it that
I tell
way.
you what.
Tough
I
shit.
tell you
People
what.
see a lot
I
of things.
got you.
Explain it to me.
I got you, right? I tell you what, if you could show me an example where it is literally, right, a Mrs. Doubtfire situation where there is never any other, right, sexually suggestive behavior that happens in that person's life. And the only reason why they're bothering to dress up this way is specifically because, right, of some other reason outside of some, uh, what some would probably consider, uh, well, what's the word? Tell you what, see, this whole Twitch ban made me nervous about using a lot of sexual language. So what I'll say is participating in other avenues of expressions of sexuality,
You mean
right?
sexual drag shows?
So if they're not doing so if it's only about just doing the one thing and never about doing any of these sexual explicit things, then you'd probably have somebody that goes, you know what, I can respect that person doing that as an actor. But if they are doing other things that obviously lead to those types of sexually driven behaviors, then people like parents are going to have a problem with that every single time. And you don't have loads of examples to be able to point to of just the innocent example,
So,
but we have a lot of examples of people doing these sexually pervasive behaviors,
okay,
right?
so we've moved on from this is sexual for these drag queens to read books to children to, well, they might have been sexual as a drag queen somewhere else, and that makes it sexual. Is that what you're saying?
It's definitely an indicator, wouldn't you say?
What indicator to what? That they were sexual somewhere else? Like,
That there's
like
more
I
that
can
that
go
the
somewhere
reason
and get railed by a guy and then go still read a book to children the next day. Like that, what's the problem?
the left is going to have to accept that this is how it is viewed by myself, the right, conservatives, etc. When it comes to sexually explicit behaviors, you don't get
This
to
isn't
always just point
sexually
out. You
explicit
don't.
behavior.
You don't. It is from the examples that we're talking about on Twitter. You've now tried to navigately fucking point out a Mrs. Doubtfire situation in order to justify it through Drag Time Story Hour.
Well, the thing
All of the
is,
behavior, right, is associated with the examples that were pointed out on Twitter. So the good, the bad comes with the good, and
yeah.
this is where the LGBTQIA plus community needs to be taking a real hard look about the shit that they're going to support and the shit that they're going to be putting down. It ain't about coming to cry to me about me changing my mind about shit. It's about y'all having the conversations in your communities about, hey, maybe we do want to be able to put the image in people's heads that we're not out there trying to get a hold of their children, right? Or that we're trying to put these sexually pervasive ideas into our children, right? Maybe we need to have those conversations instead of conservative, you need to change your mind. And it's like, no, the examples that we have, y'all aren't addressing them. We're bringing them to the light. Y'all need to be talking about them.
The problem is, CTV, is you're the one asking for the government to go regulate other people's lives and going telling people that you can't bring your kids to the story hour, and you're taking this big hammer to slam into a situation when you had one or two examples of something you didn't like, so you've decided you're going to ban an entire subculture because of two examples. And that is the problem, CTV, is I feel like you're falling back away from your usually anti-governmental, anti-authoritarian principles. You're falling back
Except
from it
it's
due to a reactionary response to something that made you uncomfortable.
except it's not a ban.
It is.
No, it's not. Adults can
No, no,
continue
no.
to
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. You're banning it for children. So my question is, why is it that this should be banned for children? Why should you be regulating people's lives in this manner?
because it's an expression of
You
sexuality, and
have, yeah.
sexuality is
We're back
not.
to the start.
Well, we're still here. We're still
No,
here.
but CTV, the problem is you are saying that the expression of sexuality for this drag queen story hour, for example, is that they might have been sexual somewhere else. Why would I care about that? I would be fine with someone who's a literal stripper going to a library and reading kids books if they're just normally dressed, reading them a book and being like, hello, here's a very hungry caterpillar. Because
Mm,
they're not introducing the children to sexuality at all. They're just introducing the children to the very hungry caterpillar.
right. So why doesn't that person just throw on a polo shirt and a pair of jeans and read the fucking story? Why does there need to be this elaborate costume?
Okay, so we've do we agree that it would be fine for a stripper in, let's say, we'll go super conservative. They're in a burqa, okay? And a burqa going to the library and they read a book. That'd be fine. Read a book to the kids. As long as they're not introducing sexuality to kids, correct?
Well, that depend on a few things, but overall, we'll just say sure.
Okay, so if we've established that you being sexual somewhere else isn't the issue, then what would be the problem with somebody in drag reading it to the kids if they're not being sexual with the children, which they're not at Drag Queen Story Hour?
I don't see the reason why, you know, because drag time story hour
Got taken out by Big Drag. I don't know where he went. CTV?
that you know
Oh, there he is.
in reality that was a big drag. Did you know I got the bowl right?
Oh, sorry.
Anyway,
You were smoking. Gotcha. God, I want
yeah,
some weed.
yeah. So you played right into the joke, right? So outstanding. The point here is, Dylan, is that there's no reason, right, for because drag in this case could be a straight or homosexual or a heterosexual or homosexual individual, right, that is dressing as a female, right, to read stories to children, right? So if that's the case, then there should be no reason at all for this heterosexual or homosexual individual, right, to wear a pair of jeans and a polo shirt and, address themselves as a professional and sane person whenever they're interacting with children. The need for, you know, say theater, right? And that sort of thing, right? Uh I feel like that whenever it's done, say like example, whenever I was in high school, could have, participated in, like one of the school plays, like Romeo and Juliet, right? The kids doing it, right, while being supervised by the adults, I think that's appropriate. I think it's inappropriate whenever you start bringing adults interacting that way with
Okay,
the children.
here's my compromise. I'm going to
Okay.
organize an event instead where we dress up the kids in drag and we read a story to them. There's my compromise.
Mm, no.
What? But I thought but it's for the kids then.
Mm, you're going to have a real hard time selling that one to parents.
Yeah, because you're just having a disgust response. This whole thing is just a reactionary response to I feel like something you don't understand. You're jumping in loops to try to justify this authoritarian response to this issue.
Well,
Non-issue, really.
I'm trying to explain it to a friend by way of the way I feel about it and what I've been seeing about this and how people have been reacting to it from where I'm sitting. So that's how I'm doing that, right? So that's just how the conversation needs to move forward for the LGBTQIA plus community, right? Is trying to be a lot more clear and concise on putting down the things that they wouldn't want to be examples
Well, the
of
thing
the
the thing is, it's not that we don't want to highlight the best examples. It's that the worst examples of our community will always be the most highlighted because it's the easiest to demonize us in those instances. If you look at the history of how people portray queer people in media, or how conservative commentators will portray the queer community, they'll always take the worst examples to portray us. We can do the best things in the world. A lot of queer people used to march in suits and ties under the queer liberation flag, trying to be as presentable as possible. and they would still get their fucking asses beat because there would still be somebody trying to market us as all pedophiles. This is nothing that the individual queer person, or even the queer community, can solve. The only thing that could be solved by is like tackling queer phobia that makes people view us in those ways, or the queer phobic commentary that portrays us as pedophiles trying to groom children.
Well, then maybe then you need to refocus your attention on adults and take and leave the children's conversation completely out of it, right? And allow the people that once they become adults and they want
But
to to experience that in life, they find people that are like-minded and head in that direction. But there's no reason, right, to be trying to, you know, you know, there's no reason to be trying to
the thing
um
is, this feels like removing.
normalize to normalize having, examples like the ones we saw in Texas or Christina Aguilera's fucking dildo on a stage,
Who
like, any of that should not
who
be
cares about
censored.
the Christina Aguilera thing? Who What does that have to do with this issue at all?
Well, it's like, that's not s I don't that should not be normalized as standard
That has
behavior in front of
nothing to
children.
do about kids and drag in queer culture.
Then explain to me
Why did you
why
even
it
bring
is.
it up? What does that have to do with this?
What do you mean?
What does Christina Aguilera's big Hulk PP have to do with queers, kids, and drag?
Because it's being brought up, right, as a
Example of drag?
family drag
It
event.
was not
Yeah.
a friendly family drag event. How was her big Hulk PP part of a family friendly drag event? What drag queens were there sponsoring it for the children? Was it advertised as a children's event? What do you like? How was it a children's event?
I mean,
Advertised for children.
that's definitely my understanding for how the conversation was moving as far as it was being promoted. It wasn't saying, "Hey, Christina Aguilera, adult only,
Well,
18
I don't
plus,"
know if they said
like,
adult only, but they weren't like bring your kids seven and under, best appreciated. It was just like Christina Aguilera being as
right. So since you
create.
didn't say don't bring your kids, that right there's where the problem is. If you're going to have a big green
No,
Hulk dildo on the stage, you should have said don't bring your kids.
but this has nothing to do with drag, and I would agree that maybe if you're going to tell those types of things on stage, maybe you make a warning that there will be adult stuff there. But do you even know if they even like if they said that or not? Do you have any idea? Did you look into it?
I've been trying to look into a lot of things,
Oh,
so I'm not, sure on the specifics. Because and you know me, I'm not gonna try to bullshit you,
yeah,
right?
I
So
know.
that that's where I'm at with it.
So I just don't think that's related to this at all because we don't know if she even advertised it for adults or not. It doesn't have anything to do with drag. It's just a concert that had a big penis involved because the concert singer was trying to be provocative. It has nothing to
Well,
do
if you
with it being marketed towards children at all. It's just it's just like Lady Gaga behavior. That's all it is.
yeah, but if you don't say if you're planning on doing that and you don't have the forewarning ahead of time, don't bring your kids to this because you're about to have a giant green Hulk penis, right? Not like a dildo or something that's kind of phallic shaped, right? But like an actual
I
veiny thing.
agree that nobody should
That,
bring their children to the Hulk penis show, but I don't think that has anything to do with children in drag.
yeah, so that's what it that all of this ends up being spun up in the big LGBTQIA plus. The plus means now it's all inclusive.
No,
So
don't.
now
Oh wait,
now you get to
wait.
own
No,
all of the shit.
no. LGBTQ plus. At no point does the plus, as I know of so far, covered the issue of Hulk PP. At no
You
point
know
was
what?
that one of the letters. I believe.
You know
I
what?
don't believe that's the case.
I did get told that there was another letter. It's actually LGBTQIA
A.
H, right, for hetero, right? So
I don't.
so this is what's happening
I
here,
don't
right? The
think. No, I
heterosexuals
don't
hold
think.
on, the heterosexuals are coming into the community and we're like,
I
"Hey,
don't think that's the
listen
case.
here, y'all doing drag time story hour, y'all shaking your ass in front of the kids, y'all
That's
doing this
not
stuff. It's
happening.
inappropriate. The heterosexuals are here to tell you that that shit's inappropriate, right? We don't like it, and y'all need to be taking that shit behind closed doors. Y'all need to get used to the fact that we're here, okay? That's how it is.
The queers need to get used to the fact that heterosexuals exist. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't think there's an H, but I know the A stands for asexual. Like
IKEA's got it right though. H actually goes to the beginning, so it's H LGBTQIA plus.
so let's just move on from this because this has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But again, this feels this feels like I mean you're saying it's not the case, but like you've really brought up no good reason for the government to take people's children away if they take them to drag queen story hour to have a book read to them. I mean, you realize that is an insane response to such a family friendly, very just milk toast reading of the Very Hungry Caterpillar.
I think it speaks more about what the understanding, especially if the legislation passes, right? It's going to say a lot about what the perception of the people is of the thing that they are willing
Yeah,
to pass
it will
legislation
really
on.
it will really say a lot about how people view queer folk. That is true. I agree with you on that.
Well, it's not necessarily that. Remember, we're all a part of this one big community, and we're having the conversation about sexuality,
This has nothing to
right?
do with sexuality. With the
But it
band,
does.
it doesn't. Again, how does me wearing a dress and big poofy hair, reading a book to children, make me doing something? How is that sexual? What am I doing that's sexual there? What's
Are you
sexual?
saying that when you do that, Dylan, that you don't feel sexy? Is that what you're saying?
I
That
don't.
you don't feel sexy whenever you do that? You're telling me that you don't?
I don't know. I just feel pretty.
Really? Pretty, same thing.
It's not the
You
same thing.
feel you
No,
feel
no, no.
invigorated.
I know there's a
Yeah.
difference there. Feeling pretty and feeling sexy is different. If a 5-year-old boy walked up to their teacher and said, "You look very pretty today, Miss Hanson," they'd be like, "Aw." If he walked up and said, "You look very sexy today, Miss Hanson," they'd be like, "What the fuck?" And for good reason.
Yeah, but that's why, you learn how to not be overt about things and still be able to communicate, right? With someone like kind of what you're feeling, right? Without being overt about it.
What?
Yeah.
No, I said what as in say that I don't understand.
Like, okay, you say that you feel pretty,
Yeah.
right? Well, somebody else hearing that might take away the, oh, Dylan feeling sexy. All right.
Okay.
He's feeling good about himself.
Well
What's wrong with that?
that's their fault. But if
Huh.
somebody feels pretty and is reading a book to children, there's still nothing sexual about that. I can feel pretty and do many things, and it's not
Hmm.
predatory in any manner.
Okay. Who said it had to be predatory for one, right? It
Sexual,
could just mean that
predatory, or anything wrong in front of children.
right. So
Many
we definitely
teachers
don't
are
want,
pretty. Teachers are allowed to feel pretty as they teach a class because they're wearing a lovely dress today. There's nothing wrong
right.
with
So,
that.
right. So now we're back to at least it produces a positive feeling for the person that is doing it, right? And then therefore the act of doing it is more about trying to make that person feel good than it is about actually trying to
Okay,
teach
now we've gotten
some
to the
type of
core of the
culture
issue.
thing to the kids,
We've gotten to the core of the
right?
issue, CTV. CTV, do you feel good when you help somebody? Or when you like let's say you find a child at a library and you read a book to them and like I would assume you'd find some enjoyment out of it. You'd be like, "Oh, that was really nice. I helped a kid today." I would find enjoyment out of it. Out of helping a child like learn how to play baseball or football or teaching a kid how to ride a bike. Parents find enjoyment out of that all the time. They find fulfillment in it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there'd be nothing wrong with somebody finding fulfillment or joy out of sharing the lovely power of reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar to children and finding enjoyment out of that. Or enjoyment in sharing their beautiful outfit, their pretty outfit, while reading a book to children. There's nothing wrong with that. I would actually say if you're having a shitty time reading books to kids, then you probably shouldn't be reading books to children. I would rather somebody enthusiastically read a book to a child and engage with them so they're, having a better learning experience.
Well, if I was going to be reading a book to a kid, I wouldn't need to put on a completely separate outfit in order for me to do that, right? That would have me be presenting as, male in this one instance, and then over here in this other situation as female, right? I'd
Okay.
just be the same person all the time,
Good for you.
right? So when you ask me that question, whenever I hear the, oh, well, I want to get dressed up as a woman because it makes me feel good, right?
Okay, you're phrasing it in a very specific way to make it sound suggestive when it isn't.
Okay, I'm putting on these clothes to make me look like a woman because it makes me feel pretty. Does
Feel
that sound
pretty,
any
or they enjoy the performance, or yeah, whatever it could be. Any of these things.
right? So to me, right, that makes me ask the question: why is it that any other parent or adult should be willing to say, like, allow that behavior to happen with the children,
With the children.
uh,
Again, they can just
when
not
it
take their kids, right? They can just be
or
like, I don't want to
or
go.
it's like, because you could just, the story or whatever it is that they're gonna be reading to them, right? Like, you wouldn't need to have somebody putting on a whole completely different outfit. Like, it'd be one thing if they were, say, dressing up as, an actual Disney character, right? Like, Peter Pan or,
Hey,
fucking.
what if they get enjoyment out of it? That would be dastardly.
But in that instance, though, you still have them dressing up as a character as more cosplay, not something random that makes that person feel good about themselves.
Who
And now
cares?
we're supposed to trust that there's no nefarious intentions whenever we have, in fact, had instances where those people that were doing that were convicted child sex offenders.
A lot of people who have read books to children have ended up being child sex offenders. In fact, there have been people who have been involved in the production of children's television who ended up being child sex offenders. The solution isn't to ban children from consuming television or ban children from going to libraries, is to lock up the individuals engaged in such practices.
And prevent the children from potentially being exploited. It's
Yes.
like
So
there's two sides to this coin.
therefore, no children's television, no reading books to kids, because anybody could be a potential pedophile. They could be reeking behind any corner.
I'm actually completely okay with children being banned from the fucking internet until they're 18 years old.
Okay, so besides that, completely out of left field insane take. Um,
How's that
you
insane?
I think children should be able to see a filtered version of the internet. I think the internet is extremely important for a modern education in today's society.
Feel like it's less important because what ends up happening is they end up with access to, shit that they shouldn't have access
Well,
to
then
because
that's why you should monitor your children's consumption options online. As long as you're being an avid and hawkish parent, maybe a parent that's being active in their child's media consumption,
I
there
can't
should
see
be no
how
problem
much
with that.
more active I could be other than, like this content, like internet, bad fucking idea. Bad idea.
Yeah, but
Bad idea.
children need to access the internet if they're going to be at all competitive in today's workforce of society. It's so important.
Really?
It's so important. Yes.
What fields is it that you think that they're going to be trying to go out there and get jobs for?
Computer
That they
engineering, tech, anything in Silicon Valley, programming, data management, computer science,
and you think
anything in
there's
the
enough
sciences.
so you think there's enough jobs in the entire country, right,
Literally,
that
literally
requires.
McDonald's, like almost all industries.
Mhm. Yeah. I feel like interactions with computers is what you actually need in order to get that experience, not the internet. So
What do you think
you can have
the majority of what the computer is used for is?
well, I think that schools, as a matter of fact, the
Where's
community
the
college
school's
that I
resources on, by the way?
yeah, so the community college that I went to, they had their own intranet, right, where they had all of their information stored on their servers, X, Y, and Z. You had access to that. So schools doing that, you can definitely do that and not have to have access to the internet, right? I feel like internet access is something that definitely needs to be controlled for children.
Yeah, no, you can control what they consume on the internet, but you shouldn't keep the internet from children. This is going to lead to America having some of the dumbest kids in the fucking world. At least the developed world, if we want
How do
to
you
use that
how do you
outdated
how do,
term.
how do you figure that they have to have access to the internet, and that they're going to end up done whenever they have access to the intranets, right? And the schools actually, teaching,
Because there's a
you know,
ton of resources
these type of.
outside of it that are still very important, and not every school has an intranet. In fact, most schools I
So
don't
then
even
what's the
think have an
point?
intranet.
So then what's the point of degrees right? If we're going to have to go to school for computer science and computer
Oh my
technology that you're
god.
saying, and then they get the degree, right?
Oh
What's the
my
point of having
god.
a degree if it's fucking pointless without the internet?
CTV.
Hey, you answer the question, bro.
I don't even know what the question is. I don't think anyone knows what the question is.
You're arguing that you have to have access to the internet for children, and I'm saying that there's no reason for the children to have access to the internet because administrators can be able to build their intranets to be able to control the information that children have access to, while at the same
No
time teaching them the
school.
skills necessary to be able to, enter the workplace and learn how to use computers. That's the point. They don't need access to the internet in
My
order to do that.
middle, high school, and college experience never was involved with an intranet at any point.
Hmm.
I think this might be something that schools might still have, but a lot of schools do not have an intranet, and the intranet cannot contain a lot of the knowledge that I think children should still have access to. I would not be involved in foreign policy whatsoever. It wasn't for my use of open source live map technology that was made accessible for me, so I could follow the day to day of the Syrian civil war. That has now led to me being a reporter in Ukraine.
So then it certainly seems like there's a conversation about age appropriateness.
Yes, so
Ah,
monitor
so
your children's internet consumption habits. Don't take them off of the internet. This is a completely separate topic, but still, like this is an interesting take, CTV.
but it comes back to the core, right? For all of it, which is their adult topics, right? And now we're getting into now age appropriate topics, right? And which access can be given, but the default answer is no internet access.
I don't.
That's my default
Well,
answer
that's
for
okay.
children, right? That would be something that like, yeah.
Okay, that's your personal default answer. Would you take children away from the parents of people who allow their children to access the internet?
Access the internet?
Yeah, access. CTV, please. Don't say no. Don't say yes. Don't say yes, CTV,
What?
please. Come on. What? When have you become nanny state CTV? When did this happen?
Dylan, I always feel very strongly about trying to make sure, and from the conversations that we've had about what my experience has been when it comes to keeping what I feel like are adult conversations away from children.
Yes.
That's where this whole thing is rooted at for me.
Mm-hmm.
Burns is an
So when it
immoral,
comes to
morally corrupt,
if the
bankrupt
examples of
man.
what drag is supposed to be continues to be the examples that are being pointed out by people like Alex Stein and others that are putting these VODs on the net, the LGBTQIA plus community needs to come together and start owning these things and start saying that's not the kind of shit that we want our community to be known for.
We
I'm
have
not seeing that.
been saying that for so long that we don't want to be known as fucking groomers and pedophiles. We have gotten lynched over that shit. We don't want that. I mean, there have been like public police documentaries made specifically labeling this: the local gays are pedophiles. Look out! Keep your kids from them. This is a long-standing effort from reactionary forces in the United States and around the world to paint the queer community in a very specific and very evil way. And this is just another chapter in that.
So then I think it's incumbent upon every member in that community to be trying to do everything
When
that
is it
they can
incumbent upon the homophobes to stop calling us pedos?
from the moment that they start insulting you,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
You don't see me, especially in my own space, tolerate people talking very insulting to each other for very long.
Yeah. This is the thing is the reason we're talking about this and and you're taking I think a very extreme reaction to this is because you saw a video and now you have decided that all of drag is now sexual and now all of drag needs to be banned from children because you've decided all of drag is sexual, even though there have been drag performances that are absolutely not sexual in any way, but you view it as sexual inherently because it's a form of non-gender conforming expression, right? It's because it's a man dressing as in clothing that is usually considered women's clothing. And so I see where you're at, CTV, but I need you to understand that there's nothing sexual about somebody in drag reading a book to children. There's nothing sexual about it. Now, society might say things about it, try to paint it in a certain way, but there's nothing sexual about it. It's a performance. It's ultimately no different than Elsa doing it, or some other princess character.
Who's Elsa?
Elsa's Elsa's from Frozen. She's the Frozen princess.
Oh, that's why I don't know that one. Well, I see the I still just see it as sexual, man. That's how I see it. That's how I see it, bro.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see it. And
It's
I
just
don't have a
theatrics,
I
man.
don't
It's just theatrics.
well, that's how I see it. I see it as sexual. So whether or not uh you do or not is kind of, like I get
Can
where
you at
you're at.
least say that you can see it in a certain way? Whatever, and I disagree with you vehemently, and we've already had this discussion. But do you need to take other people's fucking kids away, CTV?
I feel like that normalizing it only leads to later it being even more and more normalized, and I think that that's probably where a lot of,
Yes, and I want it more and
well,
more normal. I 100% want
yeah,
drag
well,
normalized.
it's clear that there are a lot of people that don't want it
Yeah, tough
normalized,
shit.
and I'm tough shit. We don't want it normalized. That's where we're at.
But the thing is, if you don't want something normalized, just be like, I think that's bad. Don't, we're gonna go ban it. Like what? Like you're taking the big government approach here. You
And
don't
that's
want to. You don't
because
want to compete in the free market of ideas,
it's
CTV. You
not
wanna.
about
You
competing in.
wanna. You wanna censor speech that doesn't align with yours.
No, I got no problem with adults saying what they want to other adults. I don't want them saying it to kids.
Should people
It's
be able
that
to read the
clear.
Bible to kids?
Sure, why not?
You know, there's rape in that.
So because there's one instance of rape, you shouldn't read
One?
any
You
part
think
of it.
there's one instance?
I'm asking you a question, right?
Okay. It's certainly a lot more sexual than Drag Steam Story Hour.
Except that's just, words written on a page. That's not, a performer being right in front of you, which is the
Oh,
difference.
words written on
And
a
people don't
page. That's
and
it. That's
people don't want that behavior normalized. You're
so
gonna have
it's
a lot
just
of
words
conservative people
words written on
that
a page. So if I wrote a book just describing multiple sex acts, and you'd be fine with me passing that out to children then?
obviously not.
Obviously not. But it's just words written on a page. What's the distinction here? What's the
The
distinction
this
that makes the Bible less offensive to consume by children than somebody in a dress reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar? The gloves are metaphorically off.
Yeah, the performer themselves.
Former. So somebody
Yeah.
shouldn't read it to the children then. Somebody the Bible should just be plopped in front of the child. The person should read it. What do you call a pastor? Have you ever seen a pastor
Uh,
preach?
a
Ever watch a
shepherd.
Billy Graham speech? By the
Shepherd
way, you know
sometimes,
Billy
yeah,
Graham,
depending on
right?
the pastor.
Billy Graham
Yeah,
is
yeah.
somebody I have listened to a lot to. It's
Okay.
probably I find his preaching a lot more informative to me. I don't agree with everything he says, but I find it I think he's a good public speaker. That is a performance. That is 100% a performance. How the pastors move around with their hand movements, and then have everybody have this ritualistic come to the start of the head of the head of the church, and they do this whole baptism, and they do these big speeches of books stories from the Bible. That's 100% a performance. They even get suited up for it. Everybody gets in their Sunday best.
Yeah, you're not gonna, get an argument from me as to whether or not it's a performance, but he's not having to get dressed up any different than his biological reality, right, and
So
understood
biological
societal norms
reality. So
in
so
order to
that's
be
the
able to tell the
problem here.
story.
There it is. We
Hold on,
finally got
hold
to it.
on, listen,
Thank you.
listen.
Thank you.
So s
We got
so
to it.
since the so s we ain't not been there.
No, we've
That's
no.
what you're
This
not
is no. We
getting.
finally hit the core, CTV. We struck the
No,
oil.
we hit the core actually like an hour ago whenever I said whew, whenever I said that whenever they have to get dressed up in the opposite uh sex that they are, that right there creates the good feeling for them. This isn't
Here it
groundbreaking
is. Here it is.
information.
No, you said that it doesn't align with their biological reality and it doesn't align with the societal standards. So it doesn't let's do the second one first. Second one. Societal standards. Who cares? I don't care if it seems strange to you or strange to someone else what I wear or what somebody else wears. As long as it's not hurting anybody, that's freedom, baby. That's how the world works. People should be able to raise their kids with whatever values they want, as long as it's not hurting the child, and teaching them with the value that this person being dressed like this is perfectly fine is absolutely morally acceptable. And if you disagree with it, whatever. I guess that's whatever you're going to say. I disagree with you, you disagree with me. But then going out and banning it because it doesn't match societal standards and taking this authoritarian approach. And on top of that, biological reality. Wearing high heels used to be very masculine. It used to be something archers actually wore in combat. Pink used to be a manly color. These pieces of clothing have no biological reality attached to them whatsoever.
Obviously, they have some biological societal understanding of what they are. Otherwise, we wouldn't be, having this conversation about gender, right? And the expression
So
of it for
what
masculine and
makes
feminine
what
traits.
makes
Like,
pink a biologically girl color?
um, what made it a girl color specifically was Macy's corporation's promotions that they
Hmm.
were making. That's what made it the
So it's
blue
not
for boys and
biology,
pink for
was it? It was
girls.
marketing.
Now that we've answered that question,
It was
we can move on to
marketing.
your other question because you're asking a lot of questions here, right? So there's no reason for them to have to try to put on an entire costume, right, in order to tell the story, right? It's obviously making parents and other adults unhappy. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this legislation. Now, I feel like that drag is inherently an adult conversation and it is sexual in nature. I haven't seen anything that makes me believe otherwise.
I could sit here and show you a 10-minute reading of The Very Hungry Caterpillar with somebody in drag. Nothing sexual happens. Everybody claps at the end. The children have fun. Then everybody goes home. Nothing happened wrong.
So good.
Why should that be banned?
I'm glad that there's one instance out there
There's
where
not
there were
one.
lots of cameras on
Hundreds.
somebody or
Hundreds of
other
instances.
hundreds of examples where we have cameras on everybody and everything's good. It goes back to the conversation of whether or not, right, what the person it's an adult conversation. There's no reason to be trying to introduce it to
It's
children, and
not
I
an
don't feel
adult
like we should.
conversation. We've already talked about it. You can't give me a reason for why it's an adult conversation. The only reasons we got to is biological reality, which we found out Macy's determines biological reality, and societal standards, which societal standards can be dumb or they can be good. In this instance, the societal standards of what clothes you wear, that's dumb and irrelevant.
Well, then I'm completely cool with kids going to uniforms in schools. Let's take the whole British approach, right? Kids wear, uniforms to schools, right? We take
You
all
sound
of
like a
the
Disney villain. You're gonna like take
I'm
all the
just
color out of the sky. Like
yeah.
colors infringe on the children's mind. It's too playful. We need to turn the world gray.
Yeah, I'm actually all for, right? Because they're kids, right? Kids need to be learning, right, about things like history and civics and science and all sorts of topics that have zilch to do with sexuality. Drag is a part of sexuality. It's an expression of sexuality. That's how it's understood
It's not.
by
Wait. No. It's not an expression of sexuality. It's a expression of performance. It could be expression of comedy. It could be expression of makeup and certain types of clothing. It can be expression of dancing. It can be a non-gender conforming form of expression. Is the closest you could possibly get to sexuality, but that's not sexuality. That's just non-gender conforming clothing. Which who cares? If I put a flower in my hair that's non-gender conforming, that doesn't mean I should be let around children.
Mm. I just looked up the definition of drag.
I think an hour and a half into the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, we've looked it up now. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. We've got definition number 7A here on Merriam-Webster. Entertainment in which performers caricature or challenge gender stereotypes as by dressing in clothing that is stereotypical of another gender, by using exaggeratedly gendered mannerisms, or by combining elements of stereotypically male and female dress, and often wear elaborate or outrageous costumes.
Okay.
The drama sparked a conversation within the LGBTQ community regarding trans, female, and non binary drag performers.
Okay.
See also drag. Oh, wow. There's a lot here. There is a
There's a lot of
lot
history
here.
to it.
There's a lot. And then when you get into it, right?
Oh
You know
no.
what?
Oh no, get into
Oh,
it.
no.
You're gonna get
Oh,
into
no.
it?
You know what it's going to, you know what I'm going to find out?
What are you gonna find out?
That this is a topic for adults and not children.
Nothing you just said is something that couldn't be expressed in front of a child with to nobody's harm.
Ooh,
Me wearing a because everything you just said could be culminated in me wearing a dress.
Look, I don't have a problem with adults doing it with other adults, Dylan. If you want to dress,
No,
in
no, no,
drag
but no,
and
no, no. I don't
supposedly,
care. I don't
bro,
care.
like I'll sit there and watch. Okay,
I don't.
dude, just do your thing. Okay, but I
Okay.
don't want nobody doing it with the kids. It's period.
What? Okay. Nothing you just said. You reading the definition didn't tell me why it would not be. Why it would be bad for somebody to read a book to a child in drag gear. By the way, I found you. I found you a picture of your world, CTV.
Oh, okay.
Of the world run by CTV for the children, okay? One second. I'm going to show it on stream, okay? Okay.
You're it. Now you are the one who is it.
Understood.
Well, I've got to hand it to you, Seymour. These drab student coverings have created the perfect distraction-free environment, thus preparing the children for permanent positions in tomorrow's mills and processing facilities. Best of all, with less than a minute to go before I leave, absolutely nothing has gone wrong.
From the drag queens, look at them. Look,
Well,
they come from the
it's
sky.
starting to rain, but
Here they come, look. Here they come.
Wow, look at all the colors, man.
Red, green, yellow, orange. I remember all of these.
I'm freaking out! Hey!
Okay. CTV, do you get what I'm getting at here? CTV? It's a very boring world you're creating.
Okay, I was getting double Dylan there because I was trying to follow along with the stream.
No worries.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I see what you're getting at. I am completely okay, like I said, with kids wearing uniforms to school and removing right sexuality and the language of it completely out of the schools.
Great. So I could still have gender non-conforming performances at school then, like drag, because there's nothing sexual about it. Because you're saying sexuality. There's nothing.
You know what? You know what? I
Yeah.
think that right there is a question for the voters to answer, and I think that we should put that up to a vote.
It sounds like you could connect sexuality to drag and
Well,
these.
I've
performances
already
as well,
told you
really.
how I feel about it, right? So like the only way to go from here would be to put it up to a vote, and the state of Florida is putting it up to a vote, I believe, and we'll see what ends up happening with it.
Okay. So do you think we should put it up to a vote whether we should be able to read the Bible to children?
I think that the left and the progressive movement have already done more than enough to remove the Bible from schools, from courthouses, from every parts of.
Guess what? You can still hold a Bible reading at a library,
Yeah, so
but
like,
I can't
you're really-
have my drag there. What if I want to have a drag Bible reading? How about that? Can we compromise?
I don't think so. I don't think so. It
I
doesn't
can
seem
I
like-
can
it doesn't
play.
seem like the people want to allow
I'll
that.
play Eve and you can play Adam. How about that?
Well, Wait. You really think you're prettier than me?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. I don't know, bro. I don't know. Did you notice that I actually cut my hair?
I think I saw a picture of it on Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, I cut my hair. We're back down to high and tight.
Fantastic.
Hmm. Yeah, so I could actually wear any wig right now. So you really think you're prettier than me?
Absolutely. Because I don't need a
Uh,
wig.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure,
I
man.
could
We
do
haven't
drag
seen, we
as
have,
my hair is right now.
I don't know. We haven't even seen you in a Speedo, right? As a matter of fact, bro, like I've been sitting here waiting. How many months has it been? Still ain't got a fucking hippy dippy championship belt. What the fuck? When are we gonna get that problem solved?
Eventually. I'm in Ukraine, so I'm a little busy.
Yeah. I've been hearing that same excuse for a while.
I think it's a pretty decent excuse, all things considered. Out of all the excuses somebody could give you, I'm in a war zone is probably near the top of the list.
Yeah, but you made choices, right? So you gotta own up to them.
Yeah, that is true. I did make choices. Choices were
Anyway,
indeed made.
how are you enjoying being over there, man? Seems like it's probably a good experience for you, getting out of the country, um, especially dealing with a lot of different cultures, backgrounds, languages, and then also like the different kinds of equipment, right? That they would, have to be able to move stuff. I'm sure you're seeing a lot of different. I mean, if you're paying attention, like different ways of manufacturing and design of things versus what we have here. So it could be like a. I'm sure that it already is, but it's like a really great learning experience all the way around.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot about Ukraine, obviously. I'm learning a lot about the conflict. I mean, it's a pretty sad, it's a pretty depressing experience, but I'm getting a lot of fulfillment from it. I feel like this is a lot more fulfilling than a lot of the work I've done in the past.
That's good. That's good, man. Because it's important to, as long as you're happy getting up and doing what you're doing every day, and you're finding a way to be able to monetize that, uh, so that you can keep doing it. That's that's what that's what this dream, this pursuit of happiness. That's what that's about, dude. And you're living it, so keep it up.
Yeah, I'm happy with what I'm doing out here.
Yeah.
Even if it's pretty depressing work generally.
But anyway, man, I feel like we've kind of circled around this thing and almost beat it like a dead horse.
Yeah, I think we have.
Mm.
Okay, man. You have a
Well,
good one, okay?
I finally, so we're unsuspended from Twitch, and we
Did you see the new
we're
article that came out?
what's that?
This article, it's been public. I'm sorry, I didn't want this to come to you. I didn't want I didn't want you to find out about this way. This is terrible. This is terrible.
Okay.
I'm showing it on screen right now. It's so terrible. I can't believe it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we're making sure not to show that on my stream because that's explicitly against TOS.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a liberal, so nobody cares.
Yeah, you say that. And then last week I got suspended. You might want to end stream and delete right now.
Fine. I'll be fine.
Okay.
Anyway, man, you have a good one, okay?
See you, buddy.
See you later. Man, we got nowhere. I mean, we put him in the corner there so many times. We got to the deepest, most basics of, well, it doesn't abide by cultural, like societal standards, and clothes have biological reality. It was the most basic of like, come on, man. And there was no way. There was no way I was ever gonna move him off of it. That's how deep that stuff can get in people's heads, man. That's how deep it can get in people's heads. He weaseled out. It's not that he weaseled out. We got him to where he needed to be. He just we can lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink.